Howdy, folks. Welcome back or welcome aboard. We are glad to have you. The exercise session is over for tonight. You may take your seats or lay back down or wherever you like to listen to the show. This is the Doc Owen Show. This is Dr. Richard Owen, joined in the Hilltop Studios by...
I'm a Surefire.
And...
Uncle Baci
is in the house. I told you last week, I know, I got all the mail. I know it was painful to listen to us without Uncle Baci, hanging out there ready to pounce on everything that was said. But
it's like there was a void there
we got through it
in the show. It was rough. It was rough.
It was very stressful. Let's just put it that way. But Uncle Baci are back. So
should I put my boots on?
We widened the door for you too.
Yeah, right.
We are all over this. Getting back in control here. We are all over the social media as Doc Owen Show. DocOwenShow. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We have a blog, DocOwenShow.com, and we're doing Pinterest. We're doing Instagram. We are building the following the best way that we know how, and we appreciate it very much. The best way to follow us is our free apps. We have an app for that. Guess what it's called? Doc Owen Show. If you go out to the iTunes store or to the Android PlayStation or whatever it's called, I never can remember because I'm an Apple guy, but you go out there and you get the app called Doc Owen Show, and you can listen to us at your leisure and in little increments, if you wish, 10 to 15 minutes at a time. So we are glad to have you. We always start our show in a very, very, very traditional manner. We have a moment of inspiration from Ms. Surefire. Uncle Baci gives us a moment of this day in history, and then I sort of close it out with a leadership quote of some kind. So, Ms. Surefire, take it away.
And tonight's quote comes from insideoftheday.com. I kind of rotate between sites now. Yeah.
Good for you.
Kind of see what I can get pretty quickly. Anyway, tonight's quote comes from Robert Martin. He is an author. And his quote is, "Taking an interest in what others are thinking and doing is often a much more powerful form of encouragement than praise."
Absolutely.
I like it. It's like get involved with your people.
Pay attention.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely
That's
right. Absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you waiting on me?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Well, I thought you were giving a cue in.
Uncle Baci, take it away, sir.
Okay. Everybody knows Abraham Lincoln, at least those who live. Did you know that, he was assassinated in 1865 in April.
Okay.
Did you know that was not the only attempt on his life?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
No,
good for you.
I didn't know.
You know your history. Well, on this day, February 23rd, in 1961, soon after the election.
1861.
1861, what did I say?
Was it 1961?
No, 1861.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
Okay. He was on his way to Washington as president, and they got word of a possible attack on the president to get rid of him immediately. He was supposed to make a stop in Baltimore.
It was #attack Lincoln.
They found out about it, and they just kept the train going directly to Washington to avoid it. So there was an attempt.
He was on the train.
He was on the train, yes.
Okay.
And the people who were doing it were the people who loved slavery and didn't like the idea that he was an abolitionist and anti-slavery party.
So,
Draw the parallel between then and now. They were trying to destroy the man even before he was in office.
right.
Just like it is today.
Had been elected.
History,
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why I say history repeats itself.
Oh,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's true.
As Yogi said, if it doesn't repeat itself, it comes awfully darn close.
That's true.
All right. Our Leadership quote tonight is from 250 Optimistic Quotes for Achieving the Extraordinary from the Optimist Club.
Who else?
This one was said by a fellow by the name of Mr. Henry Ford. This is not quite as famous as his statement that you can have any color that you want as long as it's black.
That's right.
When he was talking about the first generation Fords. Obstacles are those frightful things you see when you take your eyes off your goal.
That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah.
In golf, if you're a golfer or if you know anything about golf, they have what are called obstacles on the course, creeks, lakes, sand traps, et cetera, and inexperienced golfers or golfers who don't play very well and are not sure why, you're trying to hit the ball onto what's called a green, which is a very well manicured patch of grass that's got a hole somewhere in it, and you're supposed to get it in that hole. So, but you're hitting up to go on the green, and there's usually a creek or something to get in your way, an obstacle, as Mr. Ford says. And so many people, when they step up to hit their ball, the thought in their head is, man, I sure wish I hope I don't hit it in the creek. And that's exactly what they do. Mm-hmm. And that's what Ford's talking about. Professional golfers don't even see the creek. Mm-hmm. It's not there. It's not an obstacle.
Good point.
You don't let it get inside your head. You stay focused on your goal. Mm-hmm. Just as a current day kind of an example.
Awesome.
Overview of the show. I hope you listened to last week's show, which is Y4.22. And just in case you don't know what those are, that means year 4. We're in our 4th year, and that's the 22nd episode so far in our 4th year. Tonight's show is Y4.23, which is episode number 23 in year 4. That's what that nomenclature stands for. Because we're going to pick up a little bit of where we left off. We're going to, kind of recall some of the stuff that we got into last week because I think it is still germane, and so which means important. So we're gonna stick with it a little bit and expand on it. Before we do that, there's something I'd like to add to the show, not as a regular, but I think it's been a while since we heard it. So I'd like for the audience to hear it if you've not heard it for a while. And that is, and it goes to last week's show when we were talking about the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like for you to hear a version of the Pledge of Allegiance given to us by a former very, very funny guy, but had a very serious note to him and was an extreme patriot. So that's what a lot of people don't know. I mean, back in the day, the people in charge of show business were patriots. They were happy to be here. They felt, honored to be able to earn a living entertaining us, as opposed to the spoiled brats that we have today that think that we owe it to them to go to the movies and let them make money. Anyway, but I digress. This is a fellow, his name is Red Skelton. And if you don't know anything about Red Skelton, you should YouTube him and you'll be thoroughly entertained. But this is going to be Red Skelton and his version of the Pledge of Allegiance. Take it away, Mr. Skelton.
I remember a teacher that I had. Now, I went through the 7th grade. I went to the 7th grade. I left home when I was 10 years old because I was hungry. And I used to, this is true. I work in the summer, I go to school in the winter. But I had this one teacher. He was the principal of the Harrison School in Vincennes, Indiana. To me, this was the greatest teacher, a real sage of my time, anyhow. He had such wisdom. And we were all reciting the Pledge of Allegiance one day. And he walked over, this little old teacher. Mr. Laswell was his name. Mr. Laswell. He says, he says, I've been listening to you boys and girls recite the Pledge of Allegiance all semester. And it seems as though it's becoming monotonous to you. If I may I recite it and try to explain to you the meaning of each word. I, me, an individual, a committee of one, pledge, dedicate all of my worldly goods to give without self-pity, allegiance, my love and my devotion to the flag, our standard, Old Glory, a symbol of freedom. Wherever she waves, there's respect, because your loyalty has given her a dignity that shouts freedom is everybody's job. United, that means that we have all come together. States, individual communities that have united into 48 great states. 48 individual communities with pride and dignity and purpose, all divided with imaginary boundaries, yet united to a common purpose, and that's love for country. And to the republic, a state in which sovereign power is invested in representatives chosen by the people to govern. And government is the people. And it's from the people to the leaders, not from the leaders to the people, for which it stands. One nation, meaning so blessed by God, indivisible, incapable of being divided, with liberty, which is freedom, the right of power to live one's own life, without threats, fear, or some sort of retaliation. And justice, the principle or qualities of dealing fairly with others. For all, which means, boys and girls, it's as much your country as it is mine. And now, boys and girls, let me hear you recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Since I was a small boy, 2 states have been added to our country, and 2 words have been added to the Pledge of Allegiance: under God. Wouldn't it be a pity if someone said that is a prayer and that would be eliminated from schools too?
That is on YouTube. I highly recommend that you go out to YouTube and either mark it or download it and listen to it, simply because of the explanation that Red puts into the words of the pledge are extremely apropos today. We have lost the meaning, the true meaning of those words. We say it, but I don't think everybody gets it. There's a difference. It's about...
It's like they're going through the motions, like they say.
Well,
right?
it's, you memorize it. I mean, it's for the... It's all part of dumbing down our young people, teaching them how to memorize things to take a test, but they don't have a clue what they just studied. Some of them don't even know the name of the course. They just know that's what they had to memorize to pass the test. Uncle Baci, on that enthusiastic note, what are you going to tell us historically that we can pass on to the youths?
Yes, sir. We sure can. We've been talking about America's place in the struggle, and the struggle being a global struggle, mostly between England and France. Okay? Unlike 3 previous conflicts, this particular conflict actually began in the American colonies. French and British soldiers, they were butting heads over control of the Ohio Valley.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Yeah, and
Major thoroughfare for commerce.
absolutely a major, and it was an opening to the use of the Mississippi River as an all-important trade route. And it was also a lifeline to the frontier. France, being in control of that, limited their westward expansion. A squadron of soldiers led by a brash, unknown 22-year-old George Washington.
22 years old?
22 years old, this man was. And we're going to...
I wasn't near my mic. 22 years old?
22 years old, yes. And we're gonna talk a little bit more about his early days next week, so stay tuned, folks. He actually led an attack with against the French stronghold of Fort Duquesne, which later became the city of Pittsburgh.
Yes.
Okay.
Home of Duquesne University.
Yes, sir, and the Duquesne Incline.
Dusquene, I think. Uesne. I knew there was a silent S in there somewhere.
You got it.
Okay.
Okay. Soon after the attack, Washington troops had to surrender. I mean, they were overpowered. And then even shortly after that, another British attack met with defeat. So when this news reached London, London immediately declared war on France. Okay, and that conflict was known as the 7 Years' War. In the colonies, it was known as the French and Indian War.
Okay,
but in Europe, it was the 7 Years' War.
Because they didn't want to offend the Indians. The Indians from India country.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I don't know where they were in this whole thing.
They weren't, but
they were owned by Britain too, I think.
Yeah, well, and the British didn't want to offend them, so they referred to it as the 7 Years' War.
There you go. Well, okay. Point well made, sir.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the first phase of the war was a complete disaster for Britain. Assaults on French territory ended in bitter defeat. The French and their Indian allies inspired fear on the British and on the frontier, because they were burning and pillaging all the different settlements. The French struck within 60 miles of Philadelphia. That's how close they got. Okay? And so you can imagine that the Americans and the British too were just quite alarmed and quite disheartened by this. And you can think of the many reasons. They believed now at this point that Britain was not making a proper commitment to North America. So you can see the beginnings of independent thinking and not depending on the central government, which was in London. So these things were filling into the people's minds. Now, in London, they decided to make a board of trade. They got some of the people together from New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and the New England colonies, and they went to they convened something called the Albany Congress. That's what it became known as. And what they were trying to do is they were trying to make friends with the Iroquois Indians at Albany in order to prove the relations with them and secure their British loyalty.
Right.
Well, the delegates, they also declared, and this is the first time that this was ever mentioned, a union of the American colonies. Okay, so this was the first plan that they had, or even thoughts of being combined into one union. It was drafted by Benjamin Franklin, and the plan provided for a president appointed by the king, of course, and a grand council of delegates. Each colony was represented in proportion to its financial contributions to the general treasury. This organ would have charge of defense, Indian relations, trade, settlement of the West, as well as having power to levy taxes. None of the colonies accepted Franklin's plan. for none wished to surrender any of the power that they already had. They just were not willing to do that. They wanted to have control of their western expansion themselves. So the turning point of the war came when a gentleman by the name of William Pitt, who was originally he was a Brit, okay, and I'm sorry, I lost my place here. He believed that North America was critical for English global domination, and it was. It was really okay. Now Pitt turned recruitment and supplies over to the authorities in America rather than England. So he promised to reimburse them for their efforts, which I'm not sure whether they ever got reimbursed or not. He committed more troops. He juggled the command, replacing old war heroes with vigorous young ones. Good thing to be doing. Now, the British eventually captured Louisburg, which was an important strategic port the British used to close the St. Lawrence Seaway. That's Canada. Okay, the death blow to the French cause was struck when they lost Quebec in 1759. So the commander, James Wolfe, he bravely sent forces to the Rocky Embankment up to the French, and the Battle of the Plains of Abraham, and finally the crucial stronghold was transferred to British hands. The French chapter of North American history had ended in a bloody finale. So now this is the French being taken out.
What year?
This was in 17. Which was it? Yeah, it was in the early 1700s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The actual year, and they did the same thing with Montreal. They suffered the same fate. Now, having triumphed over the French, Britain was now compelled, important point here, to face the problem that it had so far neglected. That is the governance of its empire. Remember, up until now, pretty much the colonies were doing their own thing.
Right.
Now the British say, hey, wait a minute, we got to get a handle on this.
Got to get a grip.
Right. It was essential to London to organize its possessions, its possessions to facilitate defense, to reconcile the divergent interests of different areas and different peoples, and to distribute more evenly the cost of imperial administration. There we go, that distribution again.
I'm sorry, I lost my focus for a minute.
Yeah.
Did the colonists defeat the French without British troops?
No.
Okay.
No, it was a combined effort.
It was a combined effort.
Yes.
Okay.
So now they were confined to this narrow strip along the Atlantic coast, and the vast expanse of Canada they got under their control, and the territory between the Mississippi River and the Allegheny Mountains.
The French
the British, because of their defeat of the French.
Okay.
So they had this huge, vast area.
Okay.
Right. So a population that had predominantly been Protestant English now included French-speaking Catholics from Quebec and large numbers of partly Christianized Indians.
Right.
Defense and administration of the new territories, as well as the old, would require huge sums of money and increased personnel. The old colonial system was obviously inadequate to these tasks.
Cool.
Now, this is a prelude to we're going to talk a little bit about George Washington next week.
Good.
And how he got involved in all of this and what led to the revolution. So all of this has been building to the point of what happened, what turned the American colonists to want to have their own freedom.
Gotcha.
So we're building towards that.
Do you know from all of your research, the first thing that the British did when they took over all the French territory?
The first thing that they did?
One of the very first things that they did, and it has a parallel to a very successful business today.
Oh, okay. Well, since you're asking the question, you can answer it.
They opened Cafe Du Monde in New Orleans.
I love that place. That's like
So-
the best
Cafe
place.
Du Monde. Huh?
So they'd
I
all
love
have
it.
a place to go sit down and have coffee and chat.
That's some good coffee
That
too.
is
yeah.
that is good.
Good job, Uncle Baci.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
So we will pick up with young George next week
Right.
and
Then
follow
we'll move on
a
to the-
little bit of his career.
Yeah.
Okay.
His early career. Yeah.
His early career. I got you. Very, very interesting. Last week, we, because Uncle Baci wasn't here to rein me in, I got off on the all of the resistors to President Trump and to the current administration, and I view that entire thing as a fiasco. Now, I understand from what Baci just said, and I'm sure there are other instances historically that this has happened.
Yes, it has.
I would submit to you that they've never been successful. The president-elect was the president-elect, no matter how much they pushed back.
Well, they did pretty much kick Nixon's butt.
Well,
Go ahead.
Nixon created his own situation.
Yeah, he
right.
did.
And the problem was the people reporting to Nixon created his situation,
Yeah, they were paranoid.
and then he tried to cover it up.
Right.
It was the cover up that was the bigger mistake than being honest and getting on with it. I think, but that's just me. But still, that to me was he was already in office. They weren't resisting him openly in the streets. There weren't gangs of people being driven by the
methodology was a little bit different, but it's the same thing.
these folk. There's an ad. I saw the ad today. There's an ad out there they are hiring these protesters. They get $2,500 a month stipend and plus $50 an hour for their active participation in these things.
Wow, I didn't know the plus was in there.
Yeah.
Gee, where do I sign up?
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, the website's out there. It's I'm not going to give the name of it on the air. Look it up. But it's a .org website, and it's totally what these young people don't understand is they're being used. It's totally driven by George Soros, probably a triumvirate of Soros, Clinton, and Obama, are the ones that are organizing this. It's Soros's money, and Clinton's probably the devious strategist, and Obama's the fellow that's got the 30,000 person army and all of the molds inside of the government. I think that the extent to which we're seeing it and the way that it's being driven is completely unprecedented. And besides that, it's never been done before. But it's not that it's futile, because I understand. I can relate to the frustration. I felt the same way that these young people feel in 2008. I can tell you that I did.
Oh yeah.
I was
me too.
extremely
Yep.
disappointed. The only solace that I took, and I did it openly and vocally, was okay. All right, good. We've elected our first black president. At least we can be proud of something. And I went on about my business. I didn't participate in, nor encourage, nor did I see it going on. A bunch of people protesting him being in office. Not long after that came the Tea Party, which was protesting too much taxation and protesting administrative things that they were doing, but not protesting the man.
Right.
You follow me? And so this is very personal. This is very, very different. And every talking point that I hear out of these resistors is false. They're not. They're being led down a completely wrong path with bad information. But I don't know how to get through to them. And I mean, that's what last week's show was about, was to encourage young people to figure out how to get through to their to your peers. You know, at least the young people that listen to this show. How do you get through to your peers? You know, go out to drop me an email at Doc Owen Show. Reach out to Uncle Baci. You know, reach out to Ima. Reach out to us and help us understand how to do this, because we're doing all we can do. This is what you hear is what we think we can do. I mean, we're relatively active on a local basis about other things, but this is our outreach to help all this misguided youth, and it's predominantly youthful. I mean, I don't know whether they're unemployed, and $2,500 a month is $2,500 a month is a pretty good chunk of change.
Yes, it is.
Particularly if you get, you know, you're getting an extra $50 to go carry a sign up and down the street. So it's just completely out of whack.
Yes, it is.
So how do we get it? How do we get it back to normal, Baci? You've had plenty of time to think about it. Well, how do we get it back to? It's not like we're saying it's our. We prefer not to say it's our way or the highway, right? Because that's really not the case.
Right.
Although that was the case in 2008. That was what we were told was, you know, move to the back of the bus, sit down and shut up. We're in charge now. I mean, that's literally what we were told. And I didn't see a bunch of rioting in the streets about that.
I was just depressed.
I was depressed.
I was very sad.
I was sad for my country.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I wasn't sad.
Sure.
Well, we need to make that point real clear.
Yeah.
We weren't sad because of the individual that was elected. We were sad because we thought it was the wrong direction for the country.
Oh,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
And
Sure.
I was sad because I thought the young people had been sold a bill of goods. I thought he was full of bull sugar the entire time he was reading those speeches.
And 8 years of his history have shown us that to be true.
Absolutely true. And everything he did for 8 years was exactly the opposite of what he said he was going to do. And Trump is the opposite of that. Trump said, I'm going to do this, and boom, he started doing it. And everybody flipped out. Whoa, wait a minute. You're actually following through with your campaign promises. That ain't right. Well, I'm sorry, but yes, that is right. That's what you're supposed to do. But he's not a politician. Maybe he doesn't understand that. Maybe he didn't read the book. I understand he's not a real heavy reader. So he evidently missed how to be a politician 101 class.
I'm sure he did.
So he said what he was going to do, and now he's starting to do it. But how do we overcome this great chasm, this divide, this rip that's gone on and is going on?
Yeah. Well, really, to be simplistic about it,
Please.
it's what this,
I'm an Aggie. That's all I can understand.
It's what this program is trying to do with connecting current events to past events, to history.
Okay.
And history is knowledge. You need to understand where you were.
The main thing, history is knowledge, but the main thing that we don't get today, history are facts. That's
True.
That's one of my issues is we got an entire 50% of the population, half, right at it, that's
You know
not
what?
dealing in a factual world.
That.
Yeah, not only that, not only the facts of history. That's very. I'm sorry. Were you going to say
No,
something?
I was just going to just chime in on something that Dinesh D'Souza said that I really liked. And when you said facts, it made me think.
Oh, yeah.
He spoke to these people that were trying to challenge him. Try is the operable word. And he said, look, you are entitled to your own opinions, but you're not entitled to your own facts.
Right.
That's the fact Jack.
Right.
Yep.
And it's, to add to that, it's the why. It's the understanding of what those facts really mean. What do they mean? You know, that's why I'm trying to emphasize the principles behind history. I don't care if you remember anything about the history at all, but if you remember the principles behind it and that you learn from what went on before, then that's the pathway to correcting what you have.
Okay, it's sort of the view that, at least the view that I take of the Constitution.
Yes.
In other words, of a lot of things, you need to know what was going on at the time, and you need to know what that word meant in that point in time. It's called context,
Yes.
and that's why it's a lack of context that we have trouble from time to time with email communication, with Twitter communication, with all this electronic communication. It's lost this bubble of context that you get when you communicate with voice. With voice, you have inflection. You have rapid speed, slow speech, stuttered speech. You got all kinds of things that tell you, in addition to the words that you're hearing, tell you something about what you're hearing. And that's why you go up a level when you have face-to-face conversation, because whether you know it or not, you're also seeing body signals. You may not know how to read them, but subconsciously your brain trains itself to read those body signals out of people. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
I mean,
And then it even goes to, that kind of reminds me of some research I did recently,
Yes.
about the different cultures and
Yes.
how they see that type of context with communication.
well, and sometimes
Yeah.
cross-cultural,
That's right.
you can have the same context mean something different as you go across cultures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
So where does that leave us? May I answer my own question? That leaves us very, very challenged, because the young people that we're trying to reach, and the young people that we're trying to pull back off of the brink of stupidity, or at least appearing stupid. I'm not saying that they're stupid, because that's probably not the case. There's probably some very intelligent folks there that just don't have the real facts, and they don't have the context, because their life has been in front of a phone reading texts.
Exactly. And that yeah.
I mean, the only thing they know about somebody raising their voice is it's in all caps.
Yes. Yeah. That's true. Why are you yelling?
Yeah, why are you yelling? I'm not yelling. Yes, you are. Turn your caps on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, little things like that. But that matters.
It does matter. It's one of the principles that I use for the Doc Owen Show, and in doing my history lessons here, is I use the word ignorance in the classical sense, which means that a lack of knowledge, not stupid,
Uninformed.
but a lack of knowledge, uninformed.
Uninformed.
And we've got to recognize that our young people today are uninformed, or at least they're informed in not the facts.
Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
It's not that Democrats don't know anything. It's that what they know is so wrong.
Exactly. Yeah, that's good. Glad you tied that in.
But still, and the reason Doc Owen Show has history involved is because take it back. I mean, we got a lot of, and that's the problem. That's the challenge. Folks like me and Uncle Baci and Ms. Surefire, we're talking to young people, and when we talk about rolling things back and going back to the way it used to be, they go off. We're nuts. We're old. Get out of the way.
The first thing they start talking about,
Get out of the way. Trust me, folks. Number one, it's not intended that way. Number two, not everything that is called progress is progress.
Amen.
Not it may be progress, but it's like Yogi Berra said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. And some people took the wrong one. And it has led this country into not a very progressive position. Unless you truly believe that you want to live like what you're seeing on television, if you are watching television, or seeing anywhere, or hearing about all that's going on in Europe. And Uncle Baci had something about Sweden to bring up. I mean, they're if you want to live in do you know what somebody says is a third world country? Do you know what that means? I mean, do you really know what that means? That means the people living downtown in high rises that work for the bank and the government got all the money, and the rest of you are living in freaking cardboard boxes out in the hinterland, and you're stacking those boxes up and calling them a high rise.
Absolutely.
You don't have to go far. We live here in Texas.
You really don't.
That.
You really don't.
It's got 200 miles, and you cross the border.
But that's what this destructive atmosphere is doing to this country. That's why you're getting people like the Doc Owen Show and many, many others pushing back and saying, wait just a cotton-picking minute. You've been running over us for 50 to 60 to almost 100 years, and it's not good. It's not in the best interest of the United States. And like it or not, whatever is not in our best interest is not in the best interest of the world.
That is so true.
Now, I won't say everything we do. I'm not saying everything we do is right out there in the world. Quite the contrary. But a lot of the bad things that go on in the name of the United States are not done by the people of the United States.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I've been to third world countries, so I understand the distinct difference between what's here in America and what's there.
Yes.
And not only do they have a lack of knowledge, they have a lack of anything.
Right.
They barely get educated. They live, like you said, in shacks. It's
and that's all they know.
It's all they know, exactly. And countries that were once were thriving because of this progressive idea of only looking forward and going. This is going to be good. Not based on what you already know has worked or has not worked,
Right.
i.e. history.
Right.
You're going somewhere that probably doesn't even exist. Utopia doesn't exist.
Well, I think that a lot of times they're running to that new position to get out of the squalor that they're leaving behind. And so they think that new position is going to help them ignore the damage that they've done.
Yeah, but that's based on a lie, though, isn't it?
Of course it is.
It's based on a lie.
What you're basically
Venezuela.
saying is now that we've completely destroyed Detroit and the surrounding neighborhood, let's all move to Chicago.
Oh, please.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's the mentality.
It's like an oil spill.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And what we're seeing and what we're seeing in Europe is coming here. It's coming here. It's already on our shores, and if we allow it, it will get way too much control. And my concern is that the young people will allow it. That they have been so coddled. Sorry if I offend any of you. You've been so coddled and
Manipulated.
Manipulated.
Maybe that's
And
strong.
just given into. You jump up and down in the streets with your resist and not my president and all that kind of jazz, and nobody yanks you up and throws you in jail. They just sort of let you spin yourself out like a little baby crying on the floor, and the parents just walk away. Eventually, the baby gets tired and goes on about its business, but the baby doesn't. Number one, doesn't learn anything.
That's right.
And number two, grows up to be these kids in the street.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? And what are those young people going to, if or when they ever become adults, what kind of world are they going to create?
Exactly.
So
A scary one.
Yeah. I was talking with my daughter and son-in-law one night last week, and the topic of the conversation didn't really matter. However, it's a lesson that I wish I had learned when I was their age or younger. And what I was trying to portray to them is that if you base your life on foundational principles, whether they come from Christianity, Judaism, or they come just from history, if you base your life on specific hard rock principles, you may make some mistakes as you go along, but if you stick with those principles, eventually you're going to come out ahead. Sorry. But so we
that's
had
a
that
good point.
And I wish I knew that when I was 10 years old. I really, really do.
tonight's quote.
Here we go. Segue. He's good.
Obstacles are those frightful things you see when you take your eyes off your goal.
There you go.
So, but
Blends right in.
your eyes being on your goal they're got to be driven, as Uncle Baci said, by principles. They've got to be based. You've got to have a foundation of these capabilities. My parents were good enough to see to it that I went to Sunday school for 18 cotton picking years every Sunday. And my dad was a traveling man that came in after midnight on Friday night and spent all day Saturday doing his paperwork, but he got up and took us to church. All right?
Yeah.
I wandered from that path when I got off on my own. And I got into the Navy, and I got into this, and I got into that. And I wandered away from that path. And I've gotten back on that path within the last... I started thinking about it and realizing where I'd made my mistake maybe 8 to 10 years ago. And then started getting gradually closer.
Yes.
And now go once a month. I don't go every Sunday because I keep a busy schedule, but I'm stand committed to going once a month. But the point is, I had those principles. I had those with me the entire time.
Exactly.
And I was constantly amazed at how much of it I remembered and how much of it I actually relied upon. But I got it. I was allowed to have it in school as well. It wasn't just on Sunday.
Yes.
I was like that too.
It was in school. I bet all three of us did. It was in school as well. And it was an open, honest, and frank conversation in school about that. You follow me?
Even though I went to private school, but I think my friends too, they still had it in the public school.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
we had absolutely. We had every morning over the loudspeaker. We started with the Pledge of Allegiance, just like Red Skelton just said it. And my day, yes, was before Under God and before we had Alaska and Hawaii. So I get what he's saying. And that was, so we had the Pledge of Allegiance. No, we had the prayer first.
Yes.
Then we had the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes.
And then we had what's for lunch in the cafeteria.
There you go.
And the thing was, if you guys will remember this, it was an honor to be the one that got to do that day. Remember? It was a big deal. It wasn't something to be embarrassed about. It was an honor. You had to be getting good grades or had just gotten a star in homeroom or something. In other words, it was a privilege. It was something that you had to earn to be able to do that. Where is that? Does anybody do that anymore? I don't have
know.
children
I
in
don't
school.
have children. I don't know.
If it is, it's not pervasive like it used to be. It's not everywhere. It's not in every public school. You know,
that is correct.
I would submit to you, it's not even in every private school. And that's a real.
That's true.
That's what we're seeing. My contention is that's what we're seeing in the streets. Is a lack of that
Exactly.
involvement.
Exactly. Point on.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, how do we correct it? We got nothing to bring them back to. See, with us, we could bring ourselves back or a parent or an authority figure like a policeman or somebody could yank us up and say, you go over and sit down on the curb or I'm taking you to jail. And now we don't do that because we're scared of hurting their feelings. I don't know what we're scared of. I don't understand why they're...
I was brought up with those principles like y'all are talking about too. I mean,
free speech. Sure, you were.
Yeah.
Free speech is one thing. All right, but you've gone beyond free speech when you're stepping on the rights of others.
That's right.
That's all there is to it.
Exactly.
The First Amendment does not apply once you step in front of a door and block the door.
You got it. Exactly.
And so, okay, I got it. If I got it, then somebody else has got it. Why doesn't somebody in authority get it and arrest these people? I don't understand why it is accepted for one cotton picking minute.
Exactly. Well, again, the breakdown of morality is one thing, and just the idea that kids are not being taught the basic principles of life. They're just not.
Well, okay.
And
I get that.
And it's also beneficial to those who want to be in control of your life.
But
it benefits them monetarily. It benefits them, giving them control to do what they want to do.
I got all of that.
Okay.
I got all of that. But if I'm ever gonna straighten it out, I'm gonna yank that kid up and sit him on the curb and tell him just stay right there and just start stacking them on the curb. And if they get off the curb, they're in handcuffs and they go downtown.
Exactly.
They'll start to learn to connect the dots.
Right. And organizations that do that, I'm not talking about public organizations or government. Organizations that do that, as my son-in-law and my daughter do up in Dallas. They have an organization where they go to these poor kids who have no hope. They have nothing to live for. They're broken homes, whatever.
Right.
They go there and they teach these kids character. They teach them principles.
Yep.
They teach them self-esteem.
Yep.
They teach them all the things that they need to grow up. And many of those kids end up getting scholarships and going to college on a firm foundation. If we had more non-public organizations doing that instead of saying, no, the government's doing it, I don't want to do it anymore.
Well, you don't mean non-public, you mean non-governmental.
I mean non-governmental.
Private.
Yes.
Private organizations.
Right. Sorry.
That's right, and non-government supported.
Right.
I got you.
NGO.
Well, I completely agree, and I didn't intend to turn the show into a rant. That's not what it's about. It's not. It's about a question. It's a
question. Yes.
What do we do? I mean, it's a challenge, and how firm do we go about it? And what I'm doing is basically challenging you, the audience, is every time you get the opportunity, you need to speak up and speak out. You need to stand up and stand out, as Pastor Greg Locke says, and do something about it. No matter how infinitesimal you may think it is, but in your circle, and please reach out to the circle, particularly young people. Talk to your peers.
Exactly.
Bring them back off of the edge. Help them understand what reality is. Not everybody likes Donald Trump. Got it. But everybody should like the United States of America. And that's really what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about, I don't like anybody that's up there. You could dissolve Washington, D.C., and I'd just be one tickled little toad, I can tell you. I wouldn't miss him a bit. But that's not reality, so I don't infuse my head with nonsense. But this is America. This is the United States of America. It's the greatest nation on earth. And front row. Time to go. You have been listening to the Doc Owen Show. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. Now go out there this week and take care, pay attention, and God bless.
Bye-bye, folks. God bless.